Hello, my name is John Lepore. I'm a designer working with Pioneer Valley Regional School on a land management plan. And the purpose of the land management plan is to uh, provide better learning opportunities for kids in outdoor situations for both recreational and educational purposes, as well as to enable a stewardship plan, an ecological stewardship plan for the site. Let's begin by taking a look at this interesting shot. This is a site on the school property that very few people know about, an old foundation that dates back to the 1700s. So we're going to begin by taking a look at where the input for today came from, or how this project really came about, who were the stakeholders, as well as looking at the local and regional context, and how the present situations, threaten something called ecosystem services. And finally, we're going to look at how we can build environmental stewardship to improve these ecosystem services through the design process and what those design features are about. So first, there were two public meetings, one in early December 2011, another one in February, as well as another meeting with juniors and seniors in probably about February as well, and numerous efforts at communicating with local folks and open space committees, etc. So there's been a lot of input. Total of about 200 people have had input in this. Looking at where we're at, here's Pioneer in the red, Connecticut River going north and south, top of the map is north. Route 10 travels east-west, 63 and 142 travel north and south. And you see all the yellow on this is the rare species habitat. As I mentioned, the red is where Pioneer is. The blue would be major streams. The darker blue would be wetlands. Major roads is the black. And finally, the protected open space, which would be the purple areas. So Pioneer plays a significant role in filling a gap for animal migration, east-west as well as north-south. Think of it as kind of like a stepping stone for places needing safe areas to nest and breed and find food. Locally, we're seeing this is the boundaries of Pioneer in the purple, as well as and again, north is on the top. To the right or the east is the yellow would be a Biomap 2 natural critical landscape. There's a lot of wetlands with the blue. The funny green color is the dot is a potential vernal pool. And we see a high point and a low point. HP would be the high point, about 200 feet higher than the lowest point. So there's a difference of about 200 feet over the span of the school. And so we're going to take a look at a section, looking at the cross-section down below, give you a sense for where things are at. And those numbers are going to correspond with photographs we're going to look at. Number 1 beginning on the west corner, on the west side, just beside Route 142, a beautiful high bush blueberry wetland. And then next would be the high point of the school property. Looking south, southeast, along the ridge of mountains and along the Connecticut River Valley. Just a beautiful site, potentially be able to see the whole site, the whole river from there. From the athletic fields, looking at the building and in the flatter areas. And then finally, the lowest point would be number 4, which is Biomap 2, critical natural landscape. Again, where there's a high probability of protected, threatened, or a species of concern would find a home. And here's a list of the Northfield's endangered, threatened, and species of special concern. This is developed by the Mass Fish and Wildlife Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program, also known as NHESP. About 22 species. Last seen doesn't necessarily mean that they're not around. It could mean that they're not around. It's a matter of who goes looking for them and when they were last verified. So these are someone in 2009, if you look at the bald eagle, actually submitted a report to NHESP and said, okay, we saw a bald eagle and it was verified. And so some things haven't been verified for a long time. Look at the yellow lamp mussel. It depends on where people are at and who's willing to go out and look for some of these things. There could be more, and they could be in, we don't know. It's a process of people taking the time to go looking for them. So in any case, it's important that we have all these animals and plants around because they all play a really unique role in something called ecosystem services. So what are ecosystem services? Well, the best way to explain what an ecosystem service is to look at what they do. There's an organization called the Economics of Ecological Biodiversity, and they're trying to work with countries throughout the world and helping them come up with a definition of what these ecosystem services are. And by understanding what they are, it's really easy to begin to understand their importance. So they fall into 4 categories that are listed here: provisioning, regulating, habitat and support, and cultural. So provisioning includes food, raw materials, fresh water, medicines. Habitat and support would include species and genetic diversity. Cultural would be spiritual, aesthetics, tourism, recreation, and all the things that regulate the climate, the biological, the pollination, wastewater, erosion and fertility, extreme events, and carbon banking. So what happens when we lose these endangered species? What happens when when species disappear? Well, we begin to see a chain of events occur. And this could be one species, and generally what happens is it cascades into other critical problems. So the more the habitat is destroyed or taken for other purposes or neglected because of oversight, then these become bigger issues. Another issue is exotic invasive plants, which are prevalent on the school property. We're looking here at one species. There are actually 13 species at Pioneer. This particular one began its real rampage when it was planted in 2000 with the last building project, which happened to be the year that it was banned for sale in Massachusetts. We have a lot of it, and it was designated by the purple. And now, where the yellow is, are places where you could go and you could find it, because it's spread in 12 years to those kinds of locations. It's just incredible. So what do they threaten as far as ecosystem services? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things, 9 things that are threatened by exotic invasive plants. Another threat is impervious surfaces, particularly since they drain. If you remember that cross section we looked at before, those blue arrows are pointing to the low point on the school property. And where is that going? That's going right into that critical landscape that we talked about where endangered species may be living or are living. So that's not a good thing. How many things are threatening this? There's 4. And those are pretty important. Lastly, we know that climate change has been well authenticated. It's bringing up a lot of questions. We've already seen changes that are well documented. So what kinds of things will climate change continue to change as far as our ecosystem services, and what do they threaten? We get a taste of that, so to speak, with Irene last year, all the food in the valley that was destroyed. So there's a number of things that were really are threatened by this. So all in all, between the 3 things that we talked about, the loss of species, the invasive plants, and the threats to ecosystem services from climate change, we're really looking at some potential a really negative scenario. So what this land management plan has to do with, it has to do with how do you build ecosystem services. How do you really work with that? Well, that's done by what kinds of things we do here at the school. Doing nothing is not a solution. Doing nothing is only going to allow it to continue to deteriorate. Humans have already had a tremendous impact on the on all lands, with very few exceptions, and so this is continuing. So now we have a role. We have something we have to do. Since we brought a lot of these problems about, we have to reconcile those. Otherwise, it's going to threaten our services that we're getting and could pose some real economic threats. So the question comes up, is it cheaper to build stewardship or to build devices that are going to do the same thing as those ecosystem services? Well, certainly there's a lot of research to support the fact that doing things like putting in landscape protection and pollinator habitat is a lot cheaper and enhancing in the environment than trying to come up with, human-made structures that can duplicate that, usually for a fraction of the cost. So those two features that are listed here, and I'll have a better look at this a little bit closer. I know this is small on your screen. But just to give you a sense, if you look at the green circles, there's quite a few things there that are enhanced by just those two features. So as we add features, those things are duplicated even more. Here we've added rain gardens, permaculture, which is a design idea, but this has to do with food production. Native plantings, actually all of this is permaculture. And native replantings, getting rid of those darn invasives and enhancing them with native plantings that can find a home here and really support the local plants and animals, other plants and animals. Adding in some forest management. Forests have not been taken care of. Invasive control. An old growth forest to really give future generations an opportunity to have the experience of an old growth forest. Old growth forests are forests that have never been touched by humans, at least from Western civilization. And they're right now, out of the millions and millions of acres that existed in Massachusetts, there's only about 1,100 acres that have not been touched. So it's less than one-tenth of 1%. So the other features that are added there are a wetland walk and a platform for students. And finally, and it looks like a lot because it is a lot, and look at the services that are provided and enhanced by these things. Look how this has grown. This is a really strong design for really enhancing the school and really providing a solid education to prepare kids for the future. Very profound. So the trails and the kiosks are really important. Getting people outside as well as open air classrooms. There's so much to learn outside. And then finally, the photovoltaic array to take a lot of what we're doing and bring it home, make it real for kids to be able to see. Well, we're really doing something to save the planet here at Pioneer. In looking at kind of the big goals, and I've kind of done this backwards for a reason because I think it's helpful to kind of use this as a summary of what it is we're doing. And we're going to take a look at the map. There'll be one more map, but I want you to see this. So on the outside of it are the goals, the sustainable land use practices. Okay, what are the things we need to do to really make this into a place that's going to be here for many generations? It's a beautiful piece of land. And then the open air education recreation, which is the immediate piece that kids can get out of this. And parents and community members. A lot of people take their dogs out for a walk and they come through here and jog through the property. It's a great place to be. So this falls into 4 areas. We need to raise the runoff quality. We need to localize food security, really help kids learn how to raise food so that they can do it their entire life. We need to foster thriving biodiversity, and we need to give places, engage in places for people to go so they have a real reason to go there. And finally, this is the design resilience up close, hopefully clear enough so you can see it. And I would appreciate any kind of ideas that you have on the site, further thoughts. Of course, the first thought that's probably going to come up is, who's going to pay for this? And that's always a question. But if you don't have a vision of what the potential is, you won't go anywhere. So this is about vision. It's about putting it in front of people, giving people an opportunity to get started on it. It doesn't have to all be done at once. It can be done over, 3, 5, 10 years, and parts of it may never be done. But it's a good thing to really think about. Thank you very much.